Steve from Results. In terms of opportunity, I was very inspired by David's speech just now, mentioning civil society in the South, and all the emphasis over the last few months and this week has been on Saturday and the big donors, and this is wonderful news about the World Bank and so on, the big institutions. But after this week, I think the emphasis is going to move more towards the country level. So what can we do to influence parliaments in the South? And how can we support our civil society colleagues in the South? And I think Sean made the point that HIV activism has been very successful, partly because HIV activists were in the room in institutions like the Global Fund, but also there are direct funding opportunities for civil society on HIV through the Global Fund and through other institutions. Donors have recognised, even in education, the Global Partnership on Education has a specific line, I don't know, it might be 1% or 0.5% or something. Their funds go to civil society activists, and it's really paid off. And I'd like to know how in nutrition we can do the same.
Very good, Sally. And then I'm going to come back to the panel for some reflections on the points made.
Hi, I don't want to cast a shadow over the excitement here, but I'm thinking of it as a missed opportunity, because if you look at the goals on that very nice figure we have to start off with, it includes cognitive, motor, social, emotional, learning capacity and schooling. You're not going to get it by nutrition alone. So the last Lancet series had nothing on child development, so I'm really pleased that this one has, but I'm sorry, I'm not satisfied. For instance, if DFID is reaching 200 million mothers and children, is that what you said? 20 million, yes, sorry. I'm always getting my zeros wrong. What's the zero? How many of those are having child development as well? Right. Can't we just, for the child aims, have and child development? I've been part of discussions on how can we get Millennium Goals changed to include child development. But we don't really want to be in competition. We want to be and. So this is a real plea from the heart, from years of work. Can we just have nutrition and child development for the feeding one and the breastfeeding? The opportunity is there and we're missing it.
Sally, thank you. Let me come back to the panel and start with Anna. What about, and let's deal with this particular question about and child development. Are we missing something here that we need to pay attention to? You've been closer perhaps than any of us here to these discussions for the weekend.
I think it's a really good point. I think we've been having internally quite a lot of discussions between our education teams and those of us working on nutrition to try and find better ways of really talking about nutrition-sensitive education programs. And when you get into the detail of trying to do it on the ground, there's lots of challenges, as I'm sure you're acutely aware of. I think I don't have any objections to the point around child nutrition and development at all. I think that the challenge is how you actually do it well in the sorts of environments that we're trying to deliver these kinds of range of different sorts of interventions, and often where early childhood programs are set up for that slightly older age group of 3, 4.
You can do.
Great. Well, be good to hear more about that. But I think you're absolutely. I totally take your point, and we're trying to grapple with it, but there's a long way to go in actually working out how to do it well on the ground.
Okay, so do you want to make some other comments, Anna, about other points, and then we'll go down the...
I wanted to just pick up on this point about civil society, and that Steve, isn't it, made, yeah. And this point about direct funding opportunities for Southern civil society, which I think is a really good point. I think the Sun CSO network is a brilliant starting point in terms of the number of civil society organisations which are now sort of coming together and working under that banner. And there are some financing routes for them, though they're obviously modest at the moment. But I think it's a really good challenge, and I think we need to think a bit more about how we do that. But let's build on what's been happening in the last couple of years within the Sun CSO network.
Okay, thank you. Sandra, some reflections on the questions around country level action or civil society or the post-2015 process itself, or anything else you'd like to pick up on?
Okay, I think in terms of the opportunities for working, I think it's a great opportunity for joined-up working at government level, donors, civil society, but also for joined-up working within sectors. I mean, working for one organisation with different sectors in it, it is difficult for all of us to work together because we have different objectives. Nutrition is working with the individual child, water and sanitation is working with the communities, food security is targeting different people. So one child who's treated in a nutrition centre and is ready for discharge, where I can refer them to for food security support or livelihood support, their inclusion criteria is different. So working together in that sense is difficult. So there's an opportunity there to design programs that actually join up these different things, the treatment with the nutrition sensitive. I think that's going to be an opportunity for us if we take it. The other opportunity is to mobilize the affected. And like Sean said, they're usually the voiceless as well. Women who have low status in their own countries, children under 5, who are they going to speak to? So I think the opportunity is there, but I think it's going to be a difficult one in order to get them. And I think it will involve engaging people who don't normally talk to women's rights, women's groups, and other people who are actually very concerned about women's issues, as it were, nationally. Now, in terms of an opportunity for nutritionists, I think, to be more holistic in their approach to nutrition. I work in nutrition, humanitarian emergencies, under nutrition, severe acute malnutrition. There are others who work in obesity and we never speak to each other. Then there'll be others who work in other things. So getting all those people and actually training nutritionists who can do everything and recognize everything, including the non-communicable diseases, is another challenge, because those are going to be the same people looking at the same children. They're not going to be different people coming to different people with different things. So we really have to put all these things into one person or one competency framework, as it were, for the people that we're training or churning out of universities. I think I'll pass it on.
So, I think everybody has been immensely impressed with your presentation and what Ethiopia has achieved. So how do we take your case study and your success and spread that news and get other countries to look at their programs and perhaps learn some lessons from yours? I mean, sharing these success stories, we've already heard, is one of the most difficult things. How can we do that?
I'll try to answer your question. And I think the government had, when the health extension program started, it was, convincing the government was not a problem, because the idea came from the government. Because the government, when they came into power, they had a system already running in the areas they were working, or they worked, or they lived. Because when they were coming to power, there were a lot of extension workers living in rural areas trying to develop access. And when they took power, and when the government came, the access has been stagnant for a long time at low levels. And the health system, there are a lot of money was pouring in, and it was not making, malaria and TB were still the problem. And a lot of donor money is coming in. So you can see the health system was not working. So it changed from a 6-tier system to a 4-tier with a very broad base, as you said. And having in each village two women who are trained to at least deliver health services was the only choice that was also tested in the northern parts of Ethiopia and working in one region very well and improving the indicators are the lives of people. So I think when the issue of having a similar kind of scale in all over the country came, there was no problem of having the resources or having a salaried health extension workers in there. And I think there are three things. One, all of them are women. At least all of them in the non-pastoralist areas are women, because I think they aspire the kids also in the village, because in each village there are 2 of them, and they are 10th grade complete. So everybody would like to be like them, because they are also paid a lot. Secondly, they are young, I think 18, 19, 20. So there was a lot of job opportunities there. And the health extension workers, after being trained, were able to work in their own village where they grew as experts and making change. And people, when they save lives or when they talk about health, which was something very difficult to understand in very rural areas, and when they address issues, they were considered to be, they were trusted and their confidence grew, and they started giving different services, injections, the family planning, the implants, and others, including nutrition. And when they use the CMAM and they save kids who are malnourished and previously died, they were also accepted a lot. And I think we are moving in the same direction, and the salary has actually doubled now. And the next big thing in Ethiopia will be, we have a network of women, which are one woman is responsible for 5 women in each sub-village, and we call them head development army. It's a social mobilization scheme which is across the country. And if you think 38,000 is a lot, these are 3 million. And they are all over the country. They are volunteers. You are not paying them. They are talking to their women and saying, why didn't you immunize your child? Why didn't you deliver in a health institution? Why are you not breastfeeding that dam? Because they are doing it, and they are more. So anyways, these are, in the next 3-4 years, we hope to see what they have done. And there's a big social mobilization, a peer-to-peer kind of education, which is getting momentum, and we hope to see in the future a big thing. But I think if a government is committed, they have to put money in the decisions and trust their what the partners say, but also examine the evidence and put into practice what is in there as in the interventions. And we have a new bullets as in the new Lancet. So we hope to use that through the health extension and other programs we have. Thank you.
Great. Sounds like a program of national nudge workers, getting people to. We could do that. We could all do that, actually. Yes, Andrew.
I'm next, am I?
Yes, go on.
Okay. I think there are 2 things that come my way, probably. The first one, 2 people raised the question about evidence. I think there are big cultural issues here. I talked about the way I frame things being slightly different from the way things are being framed. And that's a cultural issue, if you like. There's also a cultural issue about what is acceptable evidence. And this relates partly to the sorts of problems that we address. Now, there's no doubt that in terms of the sort of micro studies, agriculture has a lot to learn from health and nutrition in terms of doing much better evaluations with better power, for example, in its sampling size and so on. So there's a lot to learn there. That's going to take time. But there are also issues that agriculturalists and economists have been dealing with that are much more systemic and very complex, involve causal chains and pathways which are quite long, and counterfactuals are very difficult. You can't separate out treatment and non-treatment because you've got a whole system changing. And there are questions then about what is acceptable evidence for those sorts of issues. And the cultures then clash. And there's a question then of how we learn from each other, how we engage with each other. So that's a fair. I'm not giving a solution there, because apart from the fact that we have to learn to change, but that's not going to help you talk to nutritionists who have their culture. But there are studies, there are reports, there are a lot of reports. Marie mentioned this morning the State of Food and Agriculture report by the FAO, which came out this week, which has quite a lot of information about things that work. It doesn't present a huge amount of evidence, but there are studies which do have evidence for many of the things that they're talking about. But it's not the sort of evidence that nutritionists will be used to accepting. So this moves on to the question of plausibility, and I was very interested with this and by the reaction in the room to that okay, this is the best we've got to go with it. And I wonder then, what is the criteria for plausibility? Is it fuzzy-wuzzy experts' views? Or is it hard theory of some sort? But theories can be wrong. So I think there are a lot of difficult issues there, but we need to be open to learn from each other. And this is part of engaging across sectors and disciplines. I was asked to give a paper recently on nutrition, agriculture's contribution to the nutritional goals. I wrote the paper, then I read the instructions, and my paper was twice as long as it was the word limit. That's a cultural difference. And my paper wasn't long as far as I was concerned. We compromised and we had, we met in the middle, which was great. But it's just an example. Okay, and the second one is the red pepper stuff. There are certainly big issues about land grabs and land investment, and there are rules and guidelines which are being adopted, which are being agreed on, but are they being applied? Where are the problems? Are the problems in the multilateral donors? Are they in governments, etc.? And I think there are huge issues there. I think that as regards the role of the private sector, and particularly large multinationals or large private sector investment in agriculture, I think we have to put that in the context of development trajectories. And with time, most people are going to get out of agriculture. We have to accept that. And farm sizes are going to get big. If you don't accept it, well, we should all be smallholder farmers. And I don't think most of us want us or our children to be smallholder farmers on living on a pittance. So we have to accept that. But we still have to think about the transition process. And my worry is that a lot of the private sector emphasis is actually missing out on those people who will be the first cut of not being able to engage. And the question is, what should be done about them? Because it's very difficult for them to engage on a commercial basis. And I think more attention needs to be given to that. I'll stop there.
Okay, David, to you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Stephen and others. I believe that for me at least, and I suspect for some of you, these 4 articles are challenging some of the preconceptions we have about how we should work. And the challenges are not easy to resolve because they involve quite a lot of discomfort. The first is the notion that different groups of people from different cultures, as Andrew just said, or different disciplines need to find ways to join up, to embrace each other's points of view, to work together, to trust, and to integrate. This is actually very difficult to do in practice. Sandra mentioned the challenges in her own organizations. Many of you have described them inside universities or inside government departments. Sorry, just got to do a little bit of work here. All right, so the chair of the Sun League group, so I have to deal with that in a minute. But this notion of this is a really challenging requirement, but we've got to do it if we're going to become more focused on the reality sector. The second challenge is recognizing that injustice, leads to anger. It's not often not expressed, but it's there. And if that anger is voiced, and there is space within governance processes where that anger can be expressed, it makes life quite difficult for those of us who operate within formal institutions like myself. We will not enjoy it. It will not make life fun. There will be more than one red pepper every time we try to do something a bit different. I'm looking at Keith and Leslie, both working in the World Bank. You get it in the neck an awful lot, and you're trying to do good stuff a lot of the time. It must feel a bit strange. You must have to take special medicine some evenings. And the third area, they're all a bit linked, but they're all tricky, relates to how we work in these kinds of settings, and this is the opportunity. It requires us to be ready to struggle, to be showing courage collectively and individually, to be disciplined, and sometimes also to accept being quite unpopular. And I just feel that what we will need to do over the next few years is to find ways to make some of these tricky ways of working not just bearable, but actually rewarding, continually rewarding for the extraordinary people who do it. And in nutrition, there are thousands and thousands of them, but they're not here. They're in Ferru's villages. Thank you.